The photograph is ordinary at first glance. A wide boulevard, stone facades, gas lamps evenly spaced, horse tracks etched into the roadbed. The caption reads, Market Street, San Francisco, around 1906. What arrests the eye is not what is present, but what is missing. No crowds, no carts, no pedestrians. A city built for tens of thousands, standing silent as a stage after the actors have vanished. Census tables from the same year list San Francisco's population at over 400,000. Newspapers describe congestion, noise, relentless growth. Yet the camera records none of it. Official explanations exist, long exposures, early photographic limits, but the pattern repeats. Paris, Chicago, St. Louis, Melbourne, different photographers, the same emptiness. If this were a construction phase, there would be workers. If this were dawn, there would be movement. So the question lingers quietly beneath the grain of the photograph. Who was this city waiting for? The official narrative is reassuring. The 19th century was an age of steam, migration, and relentless construction. Cities expanded to meet the demands of industry. Railways stitched continents together. Stone, brick, and iron rose quickly under human hands. Textbooks speak of confidence and momentum. The world's Columbian Exposition of 1893 becomes a symbol, civilization displaying its own triumph. Everything has a builder, everything has a date. And yet even within sanctioned histories, phrasing becomes vague. Construction timelines are described as rapid or completed with astonishing speed. Records are noted as incomplete due to fire or lost during relocation. These are not accusations, merely gaps. The architecture is described as ambitious, not anomalous. The scale is celebrated, not questioned. In Chicago, the Great Fire of 1871 supposedly destroyed city records. In San Francisco, the 1906 earthquake provided similar erasure. In St. Louis, floods did the same. Each disaster conveniently precedes a period of explosive documented growth. At this stage, nothing feels wrong. The story holds, as long as one does not look too closely at what came before the disasters, or question why post-disaster reconstruction produced buildings that seem to have always been there. Perhaps history really did move that fast, or perhaps speed became the excuse for silence. The narrative depends on accepting momentum without examining the foundation. If these cities were built so quickly, why do the builders rarely appear in their own construction photographs? Population data reinforces the official story. Census tables rise decade by decade. Immigration explains growth. Urbanization explains density. The numbers climb with mathematical certainty. Chicago grows from 4,470 residents in 1840 to 1,698,575 by 1900. San Francisco explodes from near nothing to a major metropolis within decades. But buried in footnotes are strange phrases. The 1870 census notes populations as estimated in districts where enumeration was impractical. The 1880 count includes figures reconciled after loss of original rolls. Entire townships list rounded numbers, 5,000 and 10,000, instead of household tallies. In St. Louis, population nearly doubles between the 1860 and the 1870 counts. Ward-level data appears reconstructed after flood damage, but without primary source documents. The numbers simply appear, as if the people materialize to fill prepared spaces. Census methodology notes from the period acknowledge difficulties in enumeration of transient populations and challenges in areas of recent settlement. Yet these same areas show completed infrastructure, courthouses, schools, water systems, suggesting established communities rather than frontier chaos. The 1890 census suffered a warehouse fire that destroyed most schedules. What remains are aggregate totals, not individual records. For genealogists, this creates a void. For demographers, it removes verification. Numbers imply continuity, but continuity is assumed, not demonstrated. Statistics persuade because they feel impersonal. Yet impersonal numbers can conceal very personal absences. Parents without names, origins without documentation, populations without provenance. What if the numbers were designed to smooth over something missing? What if growth statistics masked inheritance rather than recorded expansion? Courthouses, capitals, and cathedrals dominate city centers across America and Europe. Their stonework rivals anything built during the Renaissance. Their foundations run impossibly deep. Official records list completion dates, budgets, supervising committees. Yet architectural historians quietly admit certain techniques appear prematurely refined for their supposed era. The Utah State Capitol, completed in 1916, displays construction sophistication that seems advanced even for early 20th century standards. The San Francisco City Hall, rebuilt after 1906, shows neoclassical precision that official timelines attribute to rapid reconstruction. But the speed itself becomes the anomaly. Buildings of such scale and detail completed in years, not decades. Basements lie partially buried. Ground floors align strangely with street levels that appear to have risen later, as if cities were built atop older cities. In photographs from the 1850s and the 1860s, buildings show first-floor windows at street level. By the 1890s, those same structures appear with ground floors half buried, accessed by descending staircases. The narrative explains this as street raising for sanitation or grade improvements, but the scale of such operations, lifting entire city blocks, would require massive labor forces. Documentation of this work remains curiously sparse. World's Fair structures present another puzzle. The 1893 Chicago Exposition featured more than 200 buildings covering 690 acres. Official accounts describe these as temporary plaster facades over wooden frames. Yet photographs show electrical systems, water features, and architectural detailing that suggests permanence. The structures were demolished within months of the fair's closing. Why demonstrate such abundance only to destroy it? We are taught to admire endurance. Rarely do we ask what endured before us or whether what we call construction might have been restoration. In isolation, these were quirks. Together they waited for context. The same silence repeats across continents and decades. Photographs from the 1850s through the 1890s show vast streets devoid of life. Paris boulevards stretch empty beneath gas lamps. Chicago avenues recede into vacant distance. Melbourne streets display architectural grandeur without inhabitants. The word empty stands out. Long exposure explains some of this. Early photography required subjects to remain still for minutes. Moving figures would blur or vanish. That explanation unravels under closer examination. Horses should blur, wagons should ghost the frame, workers should leave traces. Instead, streets look abandoned, not busy. The scenes are strikingly silent. The cities appear finished, infrastructure complete, buildings ready for occupation but unused. A photograph from St. Louis in 1875 shows blocks of storefronts with awnings extended, doorways accessible, windows intact. No shopkeepers, no customers, no children. The exposure time listed is 30 seconds, sufficient to capture stationary objects, but not enough to erase all human presence from a supposedly thriving district. Similar images emerge from Sydney, Melbourne, Philadelphia, and Boston. Different photographers, different equipment, different years. The pattern holds: completed urban environments photographed in eerie stillness. One explanation might be timing, very early morning sessions before crowds gathered, but several photographs include long shadows indicating midday sun. Another explanation might be deliberate staging for architectural documentation. Yet why document empty infrastructure unless the emptiness itself was the reality being recorded? The 1906 San Francisco photographs are particularly striking. Taken just before the earthquake, they show a city of over 400,000 people as a ghost town. Market Street extends for blocks without a single visible pedestrian. The ferry building stands isolated. Photography does not lie, but it reveals what no one thought to explain. These were not images of construction sites or early morning calm. They were portraits of scale without population. Why do finished cities look uninhabited? Between 1854 and 1929, over 200,000 children were relocated across the United States through the orphan train movement. Records list ages, destinations, placements, but often omit parents. The intake cards from the Children's Aid Society follow a pattern. Mother unknown, father unknown. Origin uncertain. Not hundreds of children, hundreds of thousands. Foundling hospitals in New York reported unprecedented intake numbers in the 1850s and the 1860s. The New York Foundling Hospital, established in 1869, processed thousands of infants annually. Sister Irene's records note an extraordinary influx without corresponding documentation of family circumstances. Similar surges occurred in London, Paris, and other European cities during the same period. The Hôpital des Enfants Trouvés in Paris logged tens of thousands of abandoned infants during the mid-19th century. Official explanations cite poverty, immigration stress, and industrial upheaval. But the scale defies these explanations. Where did these children come from? If they were products of immigration and poverty, why do intake records so consistently lack basic family information? Genealogical researchers seeking 19th century ancestry frequently encounter dead ends, children placed through orphan systems with no documented parents, no villages of origin, no extended family. The orphan train movement is presented as humanitarian, removing children from urban poverty to farm families. But it also functioned as demographic redistribution. Children became labor, became family, became new lineages without ancestral roots. Every orphan is a human question mark. Hundreds of thousands become a demographic one. Contemporary accounts describe the children as well-fed, clean, and remarkably adaptable. They arrived on trains like shipments, were displayed on platforms and selected by families. The process resembles repopulation more than rescue. If a catastrophic event had severed genealogical continuity, orphan surges would be expected. The scale, timing, and geographic distribution match what one might anticipate during civilizational reboot. A repopulation requires people, even if their origins must be erased to make the new narrative coherent. The World's Columbian Exposition opened in Chicago in 1893, drawing 27 million visitors to see the White City, a planned environment of over 200 temporary buildings designed in Beaux-Arts neoclassical style. The fairgrounds covered 690 acres. Electrical systems illuminated the exposition with over 100,000 incandescent lamps. Water features included lagoons, canals, and elaborate fountains. The infrastructure rivaled permanent cities. Official accounts describe staff construction, plaster, over wooden frames built rapidly and cheaply for temporary display. Yet photographs reveal architectural sophistication difficult to reconcile with temporary structures. The machinery hall measured 850 feet by 500 feet with an arched roof 212 feet high. The Manufactures and Liberal Arts Building was the largest structure in the world at the time, covering 31 acres under a single roof. The electrical system alone represented infrastructure investment inconsistent with temporary exhibition. Westinghouse and General Electric competed to demonstrate power generation and distribution. The result was a functional urban electrical grid installed for 6 months of operation, then dismantled. After the fair closed, nearly all structures were demolished. The official narrative emphasizes their temporary nature. They were never meant to last. But the question remains, why demonstrate such abundance only to destroy it? Why create complete urban infrastructure, prove its functionality, then erase it rather than adapt it for permanent use? Similar patterns emerge at other world exhibitions. The 1889 Exposition Universelle in Paris introduced the Eiffel Tower, which was initially planned as temporary. The 1904 Louisiana Purchase Exposition in St. Louis featured over 1,500 buildings. The 1915 Panama Pacific International Exposition in San Francisco displayed architectural grandeur that was demolished within months. These exhibitions function as rehearsals. They demonstrate that large-scale urban infrastructure can be assembled rapidly, displayed as achievement, then removed from history. A rehearsal looks different when you know a performance is coming or when you suspect the performance already occurred. And these fairs documented what was possible, not what was new. Across images, numbers, and structures, the anomalies began to align. The same architectural language appears worldwide within decades. Neoclassical domes, Beaux-Arts facades, Victorian Gothic cathedrals, railway stations with steel and glass arching roofs from Melbourne to Montreal, from Calcutta to San Francisco. The synchronicity suggests not gradual diffusion of architectural style, but coordinated implementation of existing design systems. In the 1860s and the 1870s, major cities across continents erected nearly identical civic buildings. State capitals in the United States, town halls in Australia, administrative centers in colonial India all display remarkably consistent architectural vocabulary. Official explanations cite shared European training, pattern books, and cultural exchange. But the speed and uniformity defy these explanations. Architectural style typically diffuses slowly. Renaissance principles took centuries to spread from Italy through Europe. Gothic architecture evolved regionally over generations, yet 19th century neoclassical revivalism appears globally within decades, implemented with technical precision that suggests not learning but remembering or inheriting. The materials themselves raise questions. Granite quarrying, limestone finishing, marble installation, bronze casting require not just knowledge but infrastructure. Quarries, transportation networks, skilled labor forces, specialized tools. Yet cities separated by oceans show simultaneous capacity for large-scale stonework. Railway stations provide particularly striking examples. London St. Pancras, built in 1868, Mumbai Chhatrapati Shivaji Terminus, built in 1887, and Melbourne Flinders Street Station, completed in 1909, displays similar engineering solutions to similar problems, despite geographic separation and supposedly independent development. The arched iron and glass roofs follow identical structural principles. The decorative elements echo one another. If these were independent innovations, variation would be expected. If these were diffusions of knowledge, temporal lag would show progression. Instead, the pattern suggests simultaneous implementation of shared architectural knowledge across a global infrastructure network. Traditional history explains this as the British Empire spreading architectural standards. But the empire narrative assumes center to periphery diffusion. The evidence shows simultaneous appearance, suggesting not gradual spread but coordinated deployment. Style travels slowly, systems do not. When identical systems appear globally within compressed timeframes, the question shifts. Were these built from scratch by separate cultures learning from one another, or were these implementations of existing architectural knowledge across an inherited global infrastructure? The pattern points toward inheritance, not invention. Buildings stand complete in photographs from the 1860s and the 1870s. Builders remain curiously absent. Construction photographs from the period show finished structures, completed facades, occupied buildings. Where are the workers who supposedly erected them? Labor records from major construction projects during the 19th century are remarkably sparse. The United States capital expansion from the 1850s to the 1860s involved massive stonework and iron dome construction. Official histories credit architect Thomas U. Walter and thousands of laborers, but detailed labor roles, wage records, and worker documentation remain fragmentary. We know supervisors' names. The workers who cut stone and lifted iron are largely anonymous. San Francisco City Hall, destroyed in 1906 and rebuilt by 1915, officially employed thousands of workers. Photographs from the construction period show scaffolding and partial structures. But photographs of large worker crews actively building are rare. Most images show completed sections, not active construction. Guild archives from masonry, carpentry, and ironwork trades during the 19th century contain fewer detailed records than earlier or later periods. Medieval cathedrals have better documented builder records than 19th century civic monuments. The gap is curious. Some construction photographs exist showing workers, but they often appear staged, small groups posing with tools rather than crews actively laboring. The visual record emphasizes completed work, not the process of completion. This emphasis looks staged. This absence could reflect photographic limitations. Early photography struggled with movement. Active work sites would blur, but even accounting for technical constraints, the pattern holds. Finished buildings dominate the visual record while construction processes remain poorly documented. The absence endures. Another explanation might be that workers were considered unimportant to architectural documentation. But this contradicts labor history from the same period, which records strikes, unions, wage disputes, and worker movements in detail. Labor was politically significant, so why are they photographically absent? A third possibility is that the buildings were not constructed during the periods claimed, but were inherited structures being restored, repurposed, or reoccupied. In this interpretation, construction photographs actually document restoration work, explaining why massive crews are absent and why buildings appear finished so quickly. The buildings may be inherited. Someone laid the stones. History forgot their names or replaced them with generic attribution to thousands of workers whose individual existence remains unverified. The builders vanished. The buildings remained. What if the 19th century was not expansion, but inheritance? What if catastrophic population loss in the late 18th century or the early 19th century severed continuity, leaving physical infrastructure intact but genealogical memory disrupted? What if the rapid construction narrative emerged to explain cities that were already there, requiring only repopulation and reoccupation? This hypothesis, called the reset hypothesis, proposes that a previous civilization existed, built extensive infrastructure, then collapsed or was destroyed by war, disease, or natural catastrophe. Survivors lacked the population to maintain all systems, knowledge was lost, infrastructure decayed. Then, beginning in the mid-19th century, populations recovered or were redistributed. The inherited cities were reoccupied, partially rebuilt, and retroactively credited to the new inhabitants. Evidence supporting this hypothesis includes: first, architectural synchronicity across continents suggests coordinated systems rather than independent development. Second, empty city photographs indicate infrastructure preceded population. Third, orphan surges provided a demographic foundation without documented genealogical continuity. Fourth, census gaps and reconstruction narratives masked population discontinuity. Fifth, rapid construction timelines appear to defy pre-industrial labor capabilities. Sixth, builder documentation is often missing despite detailed architectural records. Official history explains these anomalies as coincidence, photographic artifact, immigration, industrialization, and lost records. Each explanation addresses individual anomalies plausibly, but collectively, the explanations strain credibility. Too many gaps align, too many patterns repeat, too many impossibilities cluster within the same historical window. The reset hypothesis does not claim proof. It proposes coherence. It asks whether an alternative timeline better explains the evidence pattern than the official narrative. If cities were inherited rather than built from scratch, empty photographs make sense because spaces awaited new populations. If genealogical continuity was broken, orphan surges make sense because new demographics required origin stories, even fabricated ones. If knowledge was partially lost, rapid rediscovery of architectural techniques makes sense because it was remembering, not inventing. The hypothesis remains speculative. Mainstream archaeology, history, and architecture reject it. But the anomalies persist, the patterns accumulate. The timeline compresses impossibilities into decades that should have required centuries. Not proven, but coherent. The evidence did not shout. It accumulated quietly in photograph archives, census footnotes, orphan records, and architectural impossibilities, waiting for someone to notice the pattern. The question becomes, who benefits from the official narrative, and what else might be inheritance misrepresented as achievement? If origins were disrupted, identity follows uncertainty through generations. Genealogical research into 19th century ancestry frequently encounters walls. Family trees terminate in the 1850s with orphan placements, unclear immigration records, or missing documentation. The 1890 census fire eliminated verification for millions, parish records burned, municipal archives flooded. Each gap represents lost continuity. For individuals seeking ancestry, these gaps are frustrating but accepted as historical misfortune. For populations, the gaps are systemic. If the reset hypothesis holds, most family lineages trace back only to mid-19th century starting points, orphan placements, immigration processing, or simply the moment when record-keeping resumed after discontinuity. This creates genealogical orphans at a civilizational scale. People believe their families have deep roots, but documentation proves only shallow continuity. The past beyond 150 years becomes mythology, family stories without verification, oral traditions without archival support. The implications extend beyond personal identity. Property rights depend on documented ownership. Land titles, inheritance claims, and legal standing require continuous genealogical records. If continuity was broken and then reconstructed, legal foundations rest on manufactured records rather than unbroken chains of title. Educational systems reinforced official narratives through standardized textbooks introduced in the late 19th century. Compulsory education systems emerged globally during the same period, ensuring new generations learned identical historical narratives. The timing suggests not coincidence but coordination. If a reset occurred, education systems would be essential to establishing a new consensus reality. What appears as progressive educational reform might also function as narrative control. Teach children the official timeline, repeat it until it becomes unquestioned background. Within 2 generations, living memory of alternative possibilities fades. The cost is not merely historical accuracy, but existential grounding. If the past is manufactured, present identity rests on invented foundations. This creates vertigo, not knowing where you truly come from, whether your ancestors were who you think they were, or whether the civilization you inhabit was built by your predecessors or inherited from others. Genealogy without foundations means everyone is potentially an orphan. Every family tree terminates in the same historical fog. Every lineage becomes uncertain beyond the same temporal horizon. The question persists: if continuity was broken, who restored it? Who decided which stories would be told and which silenced? Who wrote the textbooks and what did they omit? Was omission convenience or necessity? Did institutions conceal information to avoid panic or to consolidate power? If the reset hypothesis is accurate, governments, universities, and religious organizations would have faced a choice: admit civilizational discontinuity or construct a reassuring narrative of progress. Educational reforms in the late 19th century standardized curricula across nations. Textbooks adopted common chronologies. Historical narratives emphasized linear progress, from primitive to advanced, from frontier to civilization. The timeline became fixed, taught to every child, reinforced through repetition. Revision of historical texts occurred during the same period. Earlier histories written in the 18th century and the early 19th century sometimes contained references to previous civilizations, lost knowledge, or anomalous artifacts. Later editions removed these passages. The changes are documented in comparative textbook studies, but dismissed as correction of errors or improvement of scholarship. Museums curated collections that supported official narratives. Artifacts that contradicted established timelines were relegated to storage or reinterpreted to fit accepted chronologies. Archaeological finds that suggested advanced pre-industrial capabilities were explained as isolated anomalies, not systematic evidence of different technological understanding. Universities established archaeology and history departments during the late 19th century, professionalizing knowledge production. This created gatekeeping, determining what counts as legitimate inquiry versus fringe speculation. Academic standards serve quality control, but they also enforce narrative boundaries. Questions that challenge foundational assumptions are discouraged through professional marginalization rather than overt censorship. Religious institutions similarly standardized teachings during this period. Denominations that had maintained diverse local traditions consolidated into hierarchical organizations with uniform doctrine. Historical records held by churches were centralized, archived, and sometimes edited for consistency. The pattern across institutions, educational, governmental, religious, and academic, is standardization during the same historical window when anomalies cluster. This could be coincidence. Progressive societies naturally develop standardized institutions, but standardization also serves narrative control. If a reset occurred, institutions would need to coordinate new narratives. This would not require vast conspiracy, just convergent interests. Governments benefit from stable historical narratives that legitimize present authority. Religious organizations benefit from claims of unbroken lineage. Educational systems benefit from simplified, teachable chronologies. Each institution is independently motivated to smooth over discontinuity. The result is not deliberate deception but structural omission. Information that complicates official narratives is quietly removed through editorial decisions that accumulate over decades, rather than through dramatic suppression. Trust in institutions depends on the assumption of good faith. What if good faith coexisted with necessary omission? What if the truth was too destabilizing to admit? Anomalies become visible once you look for them. Once you see the anomalies, you cannot unsee them. Conversations with friends and family become minefields. Mentioning empty city photographs or orphan statistics invites dismissal or concern. The mainstream explanation is comfortable. Questioning it marks you as unreliable. Researchers who pursue alternative timelines face professional costs. Careers stall. Publications are rejected. Academic positions become inaccessible, not through formal blacklisting but through quiet marginalization. The intellectual landscape enforces boundaries through social pressure, more than explicit rules. Personal journals from 19th and early 20th century researchers occasionally surface in archives, showing crossed-out dates, marginal notes questioning official chronologies, sketches attempting to reconcile contradictory evidence. These private doubts rarely made it into published work. The cost of public dissent was professional suicide. Contemporary researchers investigating the reset hypothesis report similar experiences. Initial curiosity leads to archival deep dives. Patterns emerge, evidence accumulates. The researcher wants to share findings but faces incredulity. The response is not engagement but dismissal. People say, "That's conspiracy theory," or "You are reading too much into photographic artifacts," or "Census gaps are not mysteries, they are bureaucratic failures." The social cost creates isolation. You occupy a different reality than consensus. You see cities as inherited, others see them as built. You see orphan surges as demographic evidence of discontinuity, others see them as poverty's consequence. Some see synchronicity across continents as an impossibility that requires explanation. Others see coincidental parallel development. This isolation is not paranoia, but social reality. Consensus reality is enforced through collective agreement about what counts as reasonable. Step outside that boundary and you become unreliable, not because your evidence is false, but because accepting it requires rejecting the foundations of shared historical understanding. The personal cost is living in two worlds, the one everyone agrees upon and the one suggested by accumulated anomalies. You function in consensus reality while privately inhabiting an alternative interpretation. You stop mentioning what you have found and you keep your research private. You understand why earlier researchers crossed out their doubts instead of publishing them. Pattern recognition becomes a burden. You notice architectural impossibilities everywhere. You question every family tree terminating in the 1850s. You wonder what else remains hidden beneath accepted narratives. The photograph still sits in the archive. The census still shows gaps. The buildings still stand with missing builder records. Nothing changes except your relationship to official history, and that changes everything. The photograph is the same. Market Street, San Francisco, circa 1906. Wide boulevard, stone facades, gas lamps, horse tracks, empty. But now the emptiness carries different weight. This is not a photographic artifact or early morning calm. This is documentation of scale without population, infrastructure awaiting inhabitants who would arrive, fill the spaces, and learn to believe they had built what they actually inherited. The caption still reads, circa 1906, but the precision wavers. What if the date is accurate, but the interpretation is wrong? What if this photograph captures not a thriving city, caught in technical stillness, but an inherited city not yet fully repopulated? Look closer at the architectural details. The buildings are weathered, not new. The stone shows age. The facades suggest decades of existence, not recent construction. Official timelines claim rapid building from the 1870s to the 1890s, yet the photograph shows maturity inconsistent with structures only 15 to 30 years old. The gas lamps stand evenly spaced, suggesting systematic infrastructure installation, not gradual development. The street itself is perfectly graded, curbed, and maintained. This is not frontier chaos or industrial explosion. This is planned urbanism, possibly inherited from earlier systematizers. The census insists 400,000 people lived here. Newspapers describe crowds and congestion. Yet the photographic record contradicts the textual record. One of these sources is less reliable than assumed. If we trust the camera, the city was not as populated as claimed. If we trust the census, photography captured impossibly empty moments across dozens of cities, repeatedly. Or the third option is that the city infrastructure predated the population, and both census and photograph record truth. Numbers counted people being resettled into prepared spaces, and cameras captured those spaces before resettlement was complete. The question is no longer who was this city waiting for. The question becomes who built this city before it waited. And beneath that, what happened to them? The city was not empty because it was unfinished. It was empty because it was inherited, ready for new inhabitants who would be told they had built it themselves, who would raise children believing the official story, who would forget within 2 generations that the foundations beneath them were laid by others.